My boyfriend told me to stop treating our relationship like an engagement. He said we were just casually dating. I agreed and said he was right. Then I started splitting every bill, stopped picking him up, and made plans without him. 2 weeks later, he was begging to go back to how things used to be. Hello, everyone. My name is Marina Val. I'm 33, and I have always been the kind of woman who takes relationships seriously. Not in a desperate way. Not in the kind of way where I need a ring after 3 dates or start building a future before someone has earned a place in it. But when I give someone my time, my energy, my patience, and my consistency, I expect it to mean something. I don't treat people like temporary entertainment. And for a long time, I thought Elliot understood that. We had been together for a little over a year. From the outside, maybe nothing about us looked dramatic. We weren't posting long anniversary captions or making public declarations. But privately, we had built a life that felt stable. He spent most weekends at my place. I knew how he liked his coffee. He knew which side of the couch I curled into when I was tired. I kept his favorite tea in my cabinet, even though I didn't drink it. He had a drawer at my apartment that slowly became 2 drawers, then a shelf, then a toothbrush by my sink. None of it happened overnight. It happened quietly, the way serious things usually do. We had routines, Friday dinners, Sunday errands, random calls when one of us had a hard day. If he needed a ride, I made time. If his schedule shifted, I adjusted. If he forgot to eat because work ran late, I ordered something for him. I didn't do those things because I was trying to trap him. I did them because I loved him, or at least I loved the version of us I thought we were building. Elliot was charming in a way that didn't look dangerous at first. He was warm when he wanted to be, funny when people were watching, gentle when he felt secure. He had this habit of touching the back of my hand when he wanted to soften a conversation, like one small gesture could make everything feel safe again. And for a while, I believed that softness meant safety. But small things started happening. At dinner with his friends, someone asked how long we had been together. Before I could answer, Elliot smiled and said, "We've been hanging out for a while." Hanging out. I laughed because everyone else laughed, but the words stayed with me. Another time, his coworker asked if I was his girlfriend. He paused half a second too long before saying, "Yeah, basically." Basically, not yes, not of course. Basically. When I asked him about it later, he kissed my forehead and said, "You overthink wording." Maybe I did, or maybe wording matters when someone uses soft language to keep hard commitment away. I started noticing how flexible our relationship became depending on who was around. When he needed comfort, I was his safe place. When he needed help, I was his partner. When he wanted convenience, I was the person he could rely on without asking twice. But when other people asked what we were, everything became vague. Not single, not committed, somewhere in the middle, a place where he could receive loyalty without fully naming it. Still, I didn't push. I told myself not every man expresses commitment the same way. I told myself actions mattered more than labels. I told myself if he kept showing up, that meant something. And he did show up, mostly. That was what made it confusing. Then one ordinary evening changed everything. We were in my kitchen. Dinner was cooling on the counter, and Elliot was leaning against the island, scrolling through his phone while I asked about plans for the following weekend. I had mentioned a friend's engagement dinner. It was small, nothing formal, but couples were invited. I said, "I told them we'd probably come." He looked up immediately. "We?" he asked, sobbed. I blinked. "Yes, us." He set his phone down. "You need to stop acting like we're engaged." For a second, I thought he was joking. I actually smiled because the sentence sounded too sharp to be real, but he didn't smile back. Then he said it clearer. "We're just casually dating." The kitchen went still. I remember the hum of the refrigerator, the smell of garlic from the food I had made for both of us, the second plate sitting on the counter like evidence of a relationship I had apparently invented by myself. Something in me sank, but it didn't break. It folded inward, quietly. I looked at him, and every vague introduction, every half label, every basically, every moment he accepted my care but avoided naming what it meant, arranged itself into one clear pattern. He didn't want less from me. He wanted less responsibility for what he received. And strangely, I didn't feel angry first. I felt awake, Because relationships don't survive on what one person assumes. They survive on what both people agree to. So I nodded slowly. You're right, I said. Elliot stared at me. He had expected a fight. Maybe tears. Maybe a long explanation about how much I cared. But I gave him none of that. I looked at the dinner I had cooked, then back at him, and said calmly, if we're casual, then I should start treating it that way. Elliot didn't respond right away. My reaction didn't match the one he had prepared for. You're serious? He asked, his tone lighter than his expression. I'm just agreeing with you, I said. We're casual. He nodded once, like that settled it. Yeah, he said. Exactly. Exactly. That word should have felt like alignment. Instead, it felt like a door closing softly in front of me. I turned back to the counter and started plating the food anyway, because habits don't disappear instantly, even when something inside you has already shifted. We ate dinner like nothing had happened. No argument, no follow-up conversation, no attempt to soften what he had just said. Just two people sitting across from each other, quietly agreeing to something that meant completely different things to each of them. But for me, it was simple. If we were casual, everything I did from that moment forward needed to match it. The change didn't happen all at once. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't revenge. It came from alignment. The next morning, Elliot texted like he always did. Good morning. Normally, I would have replied right away with something warm, something that kept the rhythm between us alive. This time, I looked at the message and felt my thumb hover over the screen. There was a small ache in that pause. Not because I wanted to punish him, but because a part of me still wanted to be the woman who answered immediately, the woman who made him feel chosen before he even asked. But that woman had been operating inside a relationship he had just denied, so I replied later. Morning. Neutral. Simple. Detached enough to hurt only me. He didn't comment on it. Not then. Over the next few days, I noticed how much of what I used to do wasn't neutral at all. It was effort, care, investment. And none of that belonged in something someone called casual unless both people chose it equally. So I adjusted. If he mentioned being busy, I didn't offer to help. If he said he had a long day, I didn't ask if he wanted me to come over or bring food. If he didn't make plans, I didn't hold space for him in mine. I stopped waiting. I started living. Not in a way that excluded him, but in a way that no longer revolved around him. The first real shift happened at dinner. We went to one of our usual places, the kind where the staff recognized us, and everything felt too familiar. When the waiter brought the bill, I didn't reach for it automatically. I let it sit between us for a second. Then I looked up and said, "Can we split it?" The waiter nodded. Elliot laughed softly. "Wait, you're serious?" I met his eyes. "I thought we were keeping things casual." The words weren't sharp, but they landed that way because they were his. For a moment, I felt the sting of it too. Splitting that bill should have been nothing, just numbers on paper. But to me, it felt like folding away a version of myself I had given freely. The version that made things easier because I believed we were building something. Elliot leaned back, studying me. "This is new," he said. "Not really," I replied. "It just makes sense." He didn't argue. He just watched the moment pass. But I saw the shift in his face. Something familiar had stopped happening automatically. After that, the pattern continued. If he texted last minute to see me, I didn't always say yes. If he said, "We should hang out this weekend," without making real plans, I didn't follow up. I made my own schedule. I saw my friends. I said yes to things without checking if he would be free. And for the first time in a long time, my life felt lighter. Not happier exactly. Not yet. Just clearer. Because I wasn't operating inside assumptions anymore. I was responding to reality. At first, Elliot treated it like a phase, something temporary, something that would settle once things went back to normal. But nothing went back. About a week in, he started noticing. "You've been busy lately," he said one night on the phone. "I have been." A pause. "You didn't tell me you were going out earlier." I leaned against my couch, staring at the ceiling. Before, I would have explained. I would have softened the moment, made sure he didn't feel left out of a life he hadn't fully claimed. But this time I said, "I didn't think I needed to." The silence that followed was heavier than the words. A few days later, he said, "You've been acting different." I looked at him across the table. "I'm just following what you said." That answer didn't start a fight, but it didn't resolve anything either, because the issue wasn't confusion, it was contrast. He had named the relationship one way, but he had been enjoying it another. Now those two things were finally aligned. Later that night, he said, what we had before, it wasn't a problem. That sentence stayed with me, because of course it wasn't a problem for him. It didn't feel casual, I said. He didn't answer. And in that moment, I understood something no argument could have taught me. When you remove the unspoken benefits of a situation, what's left is the truth of it. And sometimes the truth doesn't feel as good as the illusion did. The following weekend was the first real test. Before, weekends were ours by default. Even if we didn't plan anything, we ended up together. This time, I didn't assume. On Thursday, Elliot texted, "What are you doing this weekend?" "Not what are we doing, just you." "I have plans Saturday," I replied. "Sunday I might be out too." A few seconds passed. "With who?" I read the message twice. There it was, the quiet claim hiding inside a question. He didn't want the responsibility of being my partner, but he still wanted the access of one. "Friends," I wrote. Another pause. Then, "Okay." Saturday came, and I went out with friends I hadn't seen properly in months. Not because Elliot had stopped me before, but because I had always prioritized him without noticing how often I did it. We went to dinner, then somewhere loud and crowded, then ended up laughing on a sidewalk over something that wasn't even that funny. For a few hours I didn't check my phone, and that should have felt freeing. But there was a bruise beneath it, because part of me missed wanting to tell him everything. Part of me missed the easy instinct of reaching for my phone, sending a picture, including him in a moment he hadn't earned anymore. When I finally checked, there was a message from him. "Hope you're having fun." No question, no follow-up, just a statement that felt careful. I looked at it for a moment, then typed back, "I am." Simple, neutral, true. The shift wasn't in what I was doing, it was in what I wasn't doing anymore. I wasn't updating him. I wasn't checking in. I wasn't making sure he felt included in things he hadn't asked to be part of. Sunday, he asked to see me. "Want to come over?" Before, I would have said yes without thinking, even if I was tired or had something else planned. Now, I paused because I actually considered the question. "I can't tonight," I replied. "I already have something planned." Then came the message I knew was coming. "Since when do you make plans without telling me?" I stared at the screen and something inside me settled. "Since we're casual." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then finally, "That's not what I meant." I exhaled slowly. That was the first crack, not in the relationship, in his version of it. Monday night, we went out again. Same restaurant, same table, same waiter. But the room felt different, like the air had been rearranged while no one was looking. When the bill came, I didn't wait. "Split, please," I said, handing my card over. Elliot didn't laugh this time. He watched. "You've really committed to this," he said. "To what?" "This," he said, gesturing between us. "Whatever this is now." I held his gaze. "This is what you said it was." On the drive home, he didn't reach for my hand, and I didn't move toward him either. For the first time, I wasn't closing the space between us out of habit. When we got back to my place, he lingered by the door like he was waiting for an invitation, a signal, the version of me that used to make things easy. But I didn't offer it. "Good night, Elliot," I said softly. He blinked. "Good night." And then he left. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I wasn't sad in the dramatic way people expect. I wasn't crying into a pillow or shaking with anger. I just felt aware. Love, when it is one-sided in effort, can disguise itself as patience for a long time. But once you see the imbalance clearly, you can't go back to calling it devotion. By the end of the second week, Elliot stopped pretending nothing had changed. The space between us hadn't grown dramatically. We still saw each other. We still talked. But the structure that used to hold everything together was gone, and without it, every gap became visible. It started with questions. "Are you free tonight?" he asked one afternoon. "I have plans." "What kind of plans?" "Dinner." "With who?" I looked at my phone and felt the faintest smile. Friends. This time, he didn't let it go. You've been going out a lot. I've been living my life, I said. A pause. That's not what I meant. There it was again. But meaning doesn't live in what people intended. It lives in what they are willing to stand behind. That night, he showed up at my place unannounced. Not aggressively, just standing outside like he had done 100 times before, except his posture was different now, less certain. I opened the door. You didn't tell me you were coming over, I said. I didn't think I needed to. The moment he said it, I saw the flicker in his face. Those were my words reflected back at him. I stepped aside. Do you want to come in? He hesitated, then nodded. We sat across from each other in my living room. Same couch, same space, but it didn't feel the same. You've been distant, he said. I've been consistent. With what? With what you said we are. His jaw tightened. That's not fair. What part? This version of you, he said, frustration finally showing. It's not you. I held his gaze. It is me. It's just not the version of me that comes with expectations you didn't want. That landed hard. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. This isn't what I meant when I said casual. What did you mean? He opened his mouth, then paused, because there wasn't a clean answer. I just meant, not so serious. I nodded slowly. Not serious enough to define. That's not what I said. You didn't have to say it that directly. The room went quiet. What we had before worked, he said after a moment. It worked for you. His eyes snapped back to mine. It means you had consistency without commitment, I said. You had someone who showed up, made space, adjusted, cared, and carried the weight of us without you having to name what that meant. His expression changed, not angry, caught. You're acting like I didn't care, he said. I'm not saying you didn't care. I'm saying you didn't want to be responsible for what your care meant. That was the moment everything shifted. Because there is a difference between caring about someone and being willing to stand behind that care. He looked around my apartment like he was seeing it differently. The mug he always used, the space I had made for him, the quiet evidence of how much I had included him without being asked. This feels different, he admitted. It is different. Not in a good way. Of course it doesn't feel good, I said softly. You're finally living what you called it. He exhaled like something inside him had finally stopped running. That night didn't end in a fight. It didn't end in a resolution either. But after he left, something changed again. Not because I adjusted, because he did. He started texting more, calling instead of waiting, asking instead of assuming. He was trying to find his way back to something he hadn't realized he was losing. A few nights later, we were sitting in my car after dinner. The engine was off, city lights moving across the windshield. I don't think this is what I meant, he said. I turned toward him. What did you mean, Elliot? For the first time in weeks, he didn't have an immediate answer. He looked down at his hands, still resting on his knees. I didn't mean for it to feel like we're strangers, he said finally. That word stayed in the air. Strangers. Not casual. Not undefined. Strangers. That's what it feels like when you remove the commitment but still expect the closeness, I said. He looked at me then, really looked, like he was trying to find the woman who used to soften every hard moment for him. You weren't like this before. I was, I said. You just didn't notice because I was doing more. Over the next few days, Elliot tried harder. He texted first thing in the morning again. Longer messages, questions, small attempts to pull me back into his day. How did your meeting go? Did you get home safe? Are you free tonight? Before, those things came from me. Now they were coming from him. And I noticed something else. He wasn't just asking if I was free. He was asking where I was, what I was doing, who I was with. Not in a controlling way, in a searching way, like he was trying to map a version of my life that no longer automatically included him. One night he called instead of texting. Can I come over? He asked. I paused just long enough for him to feel it. Sure. When he arrived, he didn't walk in like he used to. No automatic kiss. No dropping his keys like he belonged there without thinking. He stood by the door, waiting for permission. I stepped aside. Come in. We sat on the couch with a careful distance between us. You've been busy, he said. I have. With other people? Sometimes. He leaned forward. I don't like that. Why? He hesitated. I just don't. That's not an answer. He ran a hand through his hair. Because I'm used to you, he said finally. I'm used to how things were. There it was. Not love first. Habit. Comfort. Access. Things were like that because I made them like that, I said. And now? Now I'm doing what makes sense. The room went heavy because we were finally close to the truth. I don't think I want this to be casual, he said suddenly. I didn't react right away. I needed to understand what those words meant now, not what I wished they had meant before. You don't want it to be casual, I repeated. He nodded. Then why did you say it was? He opened his mouth, then closed it. I just didn't want it to feel heavy, he admitted. Expectations, pressure, labels. And you thought removing the label would remove the responsibility. He didn't deny it. What we had before wasn't heavy, he said. It worked. It worked because I was carrying most of it. That hit him. You didn't have to think about plans, I continued. I made them. You didn't have to think about effort. I gave it. You didn't have to think about what we were, because I acted like we were something stable. He looked at me like he was seeing it for the first time. I didn't realize it felt like that, he said. I know. And now? Now you're feeling what it's like when I stop doing that. Another pause, but this one wasn't empty. It was full of recognition. I don't want to lose you, he said finally. There it was, clear, simple, real, but still not complete, because wanting to keep someone is not the same as being willing to meet them fully. I looked at him for a long second. You didn't have me in a way you could lose, I said quietly. His face changed. That's not true. We were together. We were close, I corrected. That's not the same thing. He leaned back, running both hands over his face. I didn't think calling it casual would change anything. That's the problem, I said. You thought it was just a word. It wasn't? No. It was a boundary you created, whether you meant to or not. He went quiet. When you said we were casual, you removed the structure that made everything feel stable. But nothing actually changed between us, he said. I did. That was the part he hadn't expected, because he hadn't realized how much of us was actually me choosing to hold things together. I didn't ask you to do all that, he said. I know. Then why? Because I thought it mattered, I said gently. Because I thought we were building something. He looked down. And now? Now I know we weren't building the same thing. That was the truth. Not dramatic, not cruel, just honest. So what does that mean for us? He asked. I thought about it carefully. It means we don't go back to how things were. His eyes lifted quickly. Why not? Because that version only worked when I was giving more than what we had agreed on. He had no answer for that. But I don't want this distance, he said. I know. Then why are you okay with it? I'm not okay with distance, I said. I'm okay with honesty. That was the difference. He stared at me like he was trying to find a version of the conversation where I softened first, where I reassured him, where we slipped back into comfort without addressing what broke. But comfort without alignment is just delay. So what happens now? He asked. That depends on you. On me? Yes. I already adjusted to what you said we were. If you want something different now, you have to define it clearly, and more importantly, you have to match it. His expression shifted. Not confused anymore. Focused. I don't want casual, he said slowly. Then don't call it that. I want something real. Then act like it. A few weeks later, things didn't magically go back to how they were. There was no sudden reset, no easy return to the version of us that existed before. Because once something has been renamed and then lived differently, you can't pretend it never happened. But something did change, not in promises, in consistency. Elliot started showing up differently, not just when it was convenient, not just when he felt like it. He made plans and followed through. He asked instead of assuming. He gave without waiting to see what he would get back. And more importantly, he named what we were clearly, without hesitation. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was honest, and honesty felt different than comfort. Stronger, quieter, more stable. Looking back, it wasn't what Elliot said that changed everything. It was what happened when I agreed with him. Because when someone defines a relationship one way and you actually live it that way, they don't react to the word. They react to the reality. And those two things are not always the same.